welcome back to Onesies, a podcast of onesies and wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew,
My name is Emily.
and Emily has decided to return to the continental United States from being
Yay!
abroad where she could claim asylum, and she made some choices with that, which
Hey,
we
I
can
planted some
discuss.
seeds. I
Okay,
planted some seeds. There are people over there I could marry if I need to. So,
cool, cool. Um, Don't forget to email Mr. Emily at onesespod.com to see how he feels about that arrangement.
I'll tell
Okay.
you some stories next week when we are together in person. It's very
Okay.
funny.
All right. So we are starting off on Dweebs, a 1995 CBS.
Woo!
Hilariously enough, I saw the ad for it and I thought it was ABC because I forgot what the logo looked like. But then it is very CBS. CBS sitcom. So it stars Farrah Fork, who had been on Wings and was sort of ingloriously not asked back to be a regular cast member after a couple seasons as a regular cast member because they found it too difficult to write for three women on the show. There were 5 to 6 men on the show, we'll just point out. Also, it's not discussed in the. So Farrah Fork died, I believe, in 2022. Not very old. She had cancer. The obituaries do not mention, but as I recall, she also had she was someone who in the 90s had really bad life-threatening situation caused by her breast implants. And so she rather
Oh,
infamously had those out. And that's not mentioned, which is fine. People's personal medical histories are not a thing. But that also could have, because the Wings was run by men, so who knows if they didn't want her without those.
cool.
So that's cool. The show also stars Peter Scolari, who also passed away recently, 2021, I believe, something like that. He was on Bosom Buddies. He was on the TV adaptation of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which fits
Oh,
because
that's
he
right.
is basically like a TV version of Rick Moranis.
Yeah, I forgot
Um,
about that.
is he Canadian? Is Peter Scolari Canadian?
I don't know. I can look.
You're gonna check that while I continue.
Yep.
Um, he was also on Newhart, I guess. I never really watched that Newhart series. Uh, Also starring Stephen Tobolowsky, who is familiar with
Yay.
everything in the world.
He is
Um,
king character actor. And in this episode, anyway, he's the most sympathetic and
by
I
far,
think the
yes.
funniest in this episode.
Yes, so far. There is also David, was it Kaufman?
Kaufman.
Who sucks. He also
Yeah, just generic weenie.
generic weenie. I looked at his um filmography really quick. He was in something called The Last Prostitute, which I believe was like a USA Network movie co-starring Will Wheaton, and it was about two boys who go to sow their wild oats, but instead become cowboys on a former prostitute's farm or something. Except Will
Weird.
Wheaton was 19 at the time, and David Kaufman was 30, and they were both playing teenagers. Um, and then finally, the show stars Corey Feldman, who is 24 at this time. Probably, if he was clean, he kept clean for filming. Um, Corey Feldman is a profound dipshit. Don't know
Problematic
how.
child star.
Problematic child star who had some terrible things happen to him, but also participated in terrible things happening to others. Very problematic, etc., etc. Yeah, and so also one thing I will mention because I don't know if Emily will own up to this. While we will never be doing the IT crowd on onesies, apparently we're doing the show that Graham Linehan watched when he was writing the IT crowd
Yeah.
and going, maybe I can give him some accents.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it when I introduced it in the last episode. It is the plot anyway, obviously not the jokes. I don't know if you've seen the side by side when they tried to remake the IT Crowd in
I
America,
refuse. I
where
still
it's like
refuse to. Yeah.
identical. So it's not identical in word for word, but the plot is taken directly from it. They just cut the cast down, gave them accents, and I would say that Moss is close to the David Kaufman character without being such a weenie, a little funnier, um, but gave him a little personality, I guess. Anyway, it is very similar except that Farrah Fawcett, who plays Carrie something, Carrie? No.
Karen.
Yes,
Yeah.
Carrie. Okay. She like has no first. She's the straight man. I'm using finger quotes in that, like, the joke is always on her. She's never the funny one. Um, and she has just no personality except for being a mothering woman to these dorks, which I guess is kind of the plot of IT Crowd, except that they give what's her name, Catherine Parkinson, more personality.
And
She's
Catherine Parkinson is not. So by the end of this episode, the boys of the office are all dependent on Fairfork,
yeah,
where um, that doesn't happen on IT Crowd in the same way.
right, right. Well, and
Um,
Catherine Parkinson is funny. She's a comedic actress, and they use her for that.
yes.
Whereas Farrah Fawcett
So
is not funny, and yeah, she's just a mom to them.
she is a mom to the men who are mostly older than her.
Yeah.
Um, God, if she has a romance thing with Peter Scolari, I'm gonna have some
Oh,
words
Jesus.
for you. I'm gonna have some fucking words for you, Emily. Okay, so the episode begins with the beginning of the IT Crowd when they are in a garage with a bunch of decorations, and I seriously was like, "What is happening?" It's the beginning of the IT Crowd. This is
Yeah, yeah. Somebody
um,
on set design had a really great time decorating that garage set,
for
like
no
in the
reason.
IT crowd.
Yeah.
Like in the IT crowd. It was so great. It was like everything it's like a little puzzle
And
finding
the
the
IT
pieces.
Crowd,
It's
it
great.
grew for years and years, and it is in one scene of Dweebs.
Yeah.
And then, because the joke, so we begin with Fairfork showing up at the garage, having awkward interactions with all the boys. All the boys being Corey Feldman, David Kaufman, and Stephen Tobolowsky, because Peter Scolari is not there yet. Does he
Yeah.
come in and then I can't remember.
I don't remember he
I
comes in at
believe,
the end of the scene.
yeah, because he's the secret weapon of the show. Is that what we would call it?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So we get this weird scene where Farrah Fawcett comes in. She's like, "I'm applying for this job. Can you guys give me some tips?" It's very sitcom-y. When I realized it was an ABC or a CBS sitcom, I was like, "Oh, that's why."
Yeah.
Um, so they're awkward around her. Do they? There's probably some jokes about computers and what she doesn't know about them.
Maybe. I don't even think at this point there's
Yeah, there's
the jokes about
really not
computers.
much.
But there is
Um,
the inappropriate joke where that she kind of makes, where she's like, "Oh, I'm here for the job, unless it's just a way to trap women in your garage." And I think they even cut to Feldog, and it's just like, oh boy, um, because these men are socially and emotionally stunted.
and also Corey Feldman said that he hadn't thought about that. And he was like, I'm gonna start a production company in my garage. Um, so Corey Feldman also wears sunglasses the whole time. So that's
Yeah,
really
he
charming.
wears all black and sunglasses. So stupid.
And basically, so yes, so the first scene ends with Peter Scolari coming in and being weirder than even the other
The joke
guys.
is like he comes in, the garage door opens, and it sounds
Yeah,
like there's a motorcycle, but it's actually like a little scooter.
yeah,
Not a funny joke, but a joke,
but a
an
joke.
attempt at a joke.
An attempt at a joke. What is interesting is the episode is directed by Andy Ackerman, who was one of the Wings directors, one of the Frasier directors, one of the late season Cheers directors. So he had undoubtedly worked with Fair Fork on Wings.
Yeah.
However, the writer is some guy named Peter Noah. I didn't look him up, but I assume
He he's like a big TV
yeah.
producer.
So we then have the opening credits, and then we cut to an office being set up. We have people in the background who will not get lines because they weren't willing to pay them. I assume they made something, or maybe they got lunch, but whatever. They certainly didn't get their side cards. So we find out that Fairfork has the job, even though she had
Oh
just
yeah.
we
You
just
don't
saw
even get to
some
see her interview.
yeah.
Which
Um,
which which in my mind is problematic, and we can get to that later when we discover her faults. Continue, s'il vous plaît.
Okay. I was sorry. I was trying to think of what her faults are supposed to be. Um, right. Okay. Well, because also IT Crowd is from 2000 and what?
Six?
Right. So, okay. Um,
Yeah, six.
yeah. This is 11 years earlier, and I would say that it is more computer intense. Admittedly, she is working at a programming company, but still,
Yeah, yeah.
um, she is in charge of coordinating like caffeine delivery for the boys. It is not.
It's still the 90s, yeah. So she's still, I mean, as office manager, there are, I'm sure, some things she has to do, but it's mostly just making sure the boys are okay,
Make
building
sure
up
they
their
have their
confidence.
snacks.
Yeah.
Make sure they still have snacks. Okay, so we get the new guys at all their desks and things.
Oh yeah,
Um,
because it's a different set.
it's a
And we
different set,
discover that it's like a penthouse office.
and she's got to go down and open the checking account, and it's 3 million for their checking account. And she's like, "Wait,
Which,
how?"
by the way, why don't they already have an account? They've been a business. They made money. Okay,
It's a bad show.
fair
Is
enough.
that
So
one of the reasons?
it's she sees the check for $3 million and she's suddenly afraid that it's more of a job than she can take on.
Yep.
It's a bigger office. You know, when she thought it was just a garage thing, then she was okay with it. But now, oh, also she takes the job. We would discover in the interim. No, it's later. Sorry. So she sees this check and she's like, "Oh my god, it's $3 million." But then we don't ever see her go down and deposit the check. We don't ever hear anything about it again.
Nope. Other than she asked Corey Feldman if they're like successful, and he's like, "Fuck yeah, we're successful."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "What does Peter Scolari do all day?" He walks in, he goes into his office, and he starts jumping up and down on a trampoline that's in there. Very funny, everyone. Just yuck it up. He's in there trying to figure out the next killer app. So when people tell you that app was not a thing before the App Store, this is 1995 on CBS. It
Yeah.
was very much a thing.
This has
She
nothing to do with your iPhone or
right.
anything,
Other yeah.
other
She
devices.
hires a gopher who does he make a sexual comment to her or something? At some point he does.
At some point he does. Um no, I think she says like I'm going to have to ask you to help me with some delicate matters or something,
And his
which
response is like in the movie Disclosure, which was
yeah, yeah.
Demi Moore forcing herself on uh, Michael Douglas, which
Yeah.
Michael Douglas's masturbatory fantasy number 73. I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones did marry him, but she is an evil human being, so cool. Anyway, moving on. Michael Douglas probably not a great guy either, though. Anyway, so she hires the gopher. He's going to explain computer things to her.
This is where we kind of first get the hint that she doesn't know anything about
Right.
computers
And then
because there's some like gibberish talk. in my estimation, because I also do not know what they're talking about.
They are,
Um,
I believe, trying to talk about programming in the 90s, and I don't know if it's real talk or if it's just gibberish. Um, but then I believe this is where we have Stephen Tobolowsky talking about, did she mention that he should try more color in the
yeah,
garage? Yeah. So he comes into work on their first day in the office in a terrible suit, and it's because she encouraged him to do that. And then she says she'll take him shopping.
yeah. And uh this isn't where it gets super inappropriate, but yeah, it does get a little weird. He again, he's my favorite character on the show, but even he and is super problematic and that like you can tell he is liking the attention that he's getting from her. Um Not quite in a can't tent situation, but like in a turn your back to the pretty lady and like roll your eyes around in your head. I love this woman who's paying
And
attention to me.
showing off to
Yeah,
Corey and David Kaufman.
David.
He's he's her favorite.
Yeah,
But then we're gonna cut to her shopping with her friend, who I don't know if she has a name, so we'll just call her Bechdel. Um, and they have a interaction with a computer store salesman where they're like, "We just want to buy a computer." He makes it difficult while he's sucking down his asthma inhaler
inhaler.
because he's a
Ugh.
nerd. There's
Oh,
also going to be
David.
a scene at some point where they're proud to be nerds or something. We're going to get
And this is a famous face. This is Andy Berman. Um, you might know him from any number of things. He was in 97 episodes of Psych. Uh, I've never seen Psych, but I've seen him in a
yeah,
million
yeah.
things.
I've seen less than one full episode of Psych. So was he in that? The
I have no
40
idea.
minutes of it I watched before I was like, no.
I feel like those are producer credits. I feel like I've seen him in a million things, but now that I'm looking through, I don't see anything that I recognize.
He did look vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
He's not very funny at all.
No.
So
It's very, very bad.
they decide they're going to get a Windows computer. So the question is, do you want a DOS computer, a Windows computer, or a Mac computer? It is
Yeah.
very difficult. So hate to do the compare, but IT Crowd does have the interview where we see Catherine Parkinson bullshit her way through the job interview. We get
Yeah.
no sense of this.
No.
And so it very poorly done. We then go back to work the next day, or do we go home to her trying to plug in the computer? I can't remember.
I feel like we get another scene with the friend where she's
We
trying
are
to
going to get it, but I don't know if we get
I don't
if it,
remember.
I don't remember the continuity of it for some reason. I think Dracula's series broke my desire to understand continuity in one way,
I
in
mean, we
any
haven't
way.
been taking notes since Dracula the series.
So yeah,
So that makes that
we haven't
tracks.
recovered from that yet.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going back to the office, and we find out that Peter Scolari doesn't want anybody working there who doesn't know their way around a computer. To which Farrah Fort gets terrified. She's like, "I'm gonna need you boys to help me," and they're like, "We can't help you. Peter Scolari is our god."
Yeah.
So, 1995, what they are, the Peter Scolari real life analog is Bill Gates,
Yeah.
not like Steve Jobs or something, which would also not be unproblematic. But the Peter Scolari characterization is abysmal, I think would be the
Yeah.
word I would use. At one point, I think it was while she and so they're back at the office. So the boys aren't sure if they can help her or not. Some of them say they won't help her because they don't want to turn against Peter Scolari because he is their god. Tobolowsky comes in with a better suit. Um, the boy,
They're all impressed. All the boys are all
Feldman,
impressed.
yeah, they're impressed, but then they make like a ball joke.
And then this is where she gets inappropriate.
Yeah,
She kisses him on the bald head and said, "Some women find bald men very attractive." And
yeah.
I was like, you've known these people for 2 days. What are you doing? 3 days. What are you doing?
So it was like being a woman in 1995. You had to kiss the bald guy on the back of the head to make him
I
feel
was a mere
better.
I was a mere child.
You know. So we then get either we've already had the scene at Fairfork's apartment that where she's trying to plug in the computer and she just can't do it because she's trying to plug the monitor cable into the wrong place.
Yeah, I think you did get the continuity right. So they're having this conversation about the computers. I think there's that joke about how she doesn't know where the cord goes, and then there's a joke about a floppy disk and a hard
A
disk,
hard
and
disk.
I wouldn't think this is what we'd be talking about because they're talking about
So
penises.
what's
Penises.
really funny is when you realize that CBS's hit sitcom at this point was Sybil. And so literally all of these lines are probably written for Christine Baranski.
And
Like,
he said, no, I'm not even going to say that.
yeah, it's just recycled from stuff Christine Baranski said no to. Have
Yeah.
you talked about how she basically set the tone for Sex in the City?
No.
Yeah, okay. Um, so yeah, and she's like, well, I'm gonna have to quit if he catches on that I don't know computers, blah blah blah. And then the friend disappears. I don't think we ever get her name. That's why I don't
Noreen
respect that.
is her name.
Noreen. Wow. Are
It's
you
what
looking
she's
at it on
credited
IMDb?
as.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
cheater. They might say her name. I think they might. We do not the boys get nice introductions. I don't think Carrie really gets an introduction in the first scene. Um, we go back to the office. Peter Scolari. Oh, there was also a scene about lunch.
Mm.
My God. So Farrah Fawcett goes into the office and she says, I'm going to take the guys out to lunch. Come with us. Peter Scolari says, explain that to me. And she's just like, what? They didn't tell me the script was going to be that bad. I shouldn't have listened to my agent. And he's like, why do people go to lunch? And she's like, I don't know, man, to socialize. And he's like, I don't like socializing.
Yeah. So keep in mind also, Andrew is being very verbose compared to the actual dialogue. Most of Peter Scolari's dialogue is stuttering and stammering and 2 to 3 word sentences at most. He is characterized in such a ridiculous way.
I mean, there is that. So what some of this is we are characterizing what it's the normie, it's the theater kids who want to be Harvey Weinstein writing debasing nerds to try to
Yeah.
get to be Harvey Weinstein type stuff. So there is, and anytime there's empathy toward these characters, it's somehow at the expense of Farrah Fork. Like
Yeah.
eventually Corey Feldman will make some vaguely lewd remark, like I've been waiting for that the whole episode. And she's just like, oh haha, that's so funny. That's what I'm here for. And so then the gopher, okay, so the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So Peter Scolari is like, you need to send me the spreadsheet for Q3. And
Something about like putting it directly on his hard drive.
yeah,
Like I didn't
so
understand it because again, it's the 90s and I was a child.
I don't
Um
know
I
how.
don't know if it was real technology.
I yeah, I didn't have a 1995. I don't know how corporate file sharing worked.
Yeah.
Um, but she can't do it. She doesn't know what a spreadsheet is, that seems unlikely. That she would be
Especially
unfamiliar
if
with
she has
that.
enough experience to get hired as an office manager.
Right.
She's a well, whatever.
Yeah. Stephen Tobolowsky helps. The other boys tell him that he's going to get in trouble and they shouldn't do it. Um, they get interrupted somehow by Scolari, maybe firing the gopher, to which Fairfork's like, why would you fire Toby? He's, what did
God.
he do? Todd. And Peter Scolari's like, he didn't know what the assembly code for farting was or something. I'm not having anybody here who doesn't know about computers. And Fairfork's like, you know what? I don't know about computers either.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, you're fired too. And so
And then
he's
he
like,
says, how did the spreadsheet get in my hard drive? And then he looks at the boys, and Stephen Tobolowsky takes credit for it.
and then Corey Feldman says that he wants her to stay too. I think, does David
Yeah.
Kaufman rat him out, or does he?
So Kaufman rats him out, and because there was this whole conversation about like, you lied, but I was just standing there, and
Yeah.
Tobolowsky was like, but you were complicit because you didn't stop me, whatever, whatever. But also, this whole time, Hoffman's character has been bitching about the office because he's concerned about getting sick and like all of the dust and Legionnaire's disease joke, et cetera, et cetera. And so Farrah Fork, Carrie, brings his desk from the garage.
His decorations from the garage or something.
Yeah, somehow she gets a hold of them and brings them to the office and to make him feel more comfortable. So they are warming up to her and in ways that, except for Feldman, but he just wants to fuck her. So that's
Yeah.
fine. Um, so at this point in the episode, they are willing to defend her.
And so there's also some more confrontation with Fair Fork and Peter Scolari, where we find out that Peter Scolari considers the boys to be his best friends.
Yeah.
And she's like, do they know that? And he's like, well, no, why would I tell them that? And it's like, ha, this is going to be a great show. This is around the point where Stephen Tobolowsky says something and I laughed, which was the only time. So that was cool. Um, and then, I don't know, he hires her and Todd back and they're going to figure it out. She bounces on the trampoline a bit with him, which I was waiting for because they had her in heels earlier, but she is in tennies for that scene. And basically, we're set up the show, which is that here are these incredibly antisocial gentlemen and the woman who will placate and I don't know, make them feel good to be boys or something.
The woman who will help them become more socially acceptable and get in touch with their feelings.
Yep,
Thank you for watching this with me, Andrew. You seem thrilled.
yep. You've already seen this, I believe.
Yeah,
You watched ahead.
I did watch ahead. I'm sorry. I was enjoying it more than anything else we've watched. I will say that, except for Freaks and Geeks.
Oh wow, fishing with
And
John.
and
No,
fishing with
fishing with
John. And
John.
fishing
No,
with
it's
John. I
fine.
love
It's
fishing.
fine. It's fine.
No, no, don't tell John.
I'm telling John Murray. Be
No.
like, John Murray, you know, Emily, she follows you on Twitter. She really likes Dweebs more than your show.
No, I don't. I don't. Oh, I don't. Okay, so next week we will maybe be in the same room together recording for episode 2. This episode is called The Privacy Show. Carrie has a boyfriend, which makes the dweebs jealous. They do a background check on him, and she finds out. I'm not going to tell you what happens after that because it's so absolutely 90s absurd business bullshit. I can't even.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to your reaction to it.
Is the guest star anyone of note, or is that a surprise for me as
Is there
well?
a guest star?
I assume the boyfriend.
He's nobody of note.
That's a bummer.
Ben Reynolds doesn't even look familiar. And I watched the episode. Oh my God. Oh, wait. Okay. That's just the episode. Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. We will see you next week when we discuss the privacy show, episode 2 of Dweebs. Andrew, I will see you in television land.
See you in
Actually,
Emily.
I'll see you in whatever town you live in.
I'll see you in that town too, Emily. Peace.
Bye.